And President Obama used this in his speech at Notre Dame, where he talked about, when he took the abortion issue and said, look, this is a process question. It's about what kind of conversation we're going to have, what kind of love we're going to bring to the conversation. And he talked about the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And he talked about how in every culture, in every faith, that's a central tenet, the central tenet. The secular version of that is the ethic of reciprocity. And so at the core of our thing is the idea that you have to enter this with that ethic. And if we were able somehow, in interactions today with each other, if we were able to do that, all this stuff would be so intuitive. Half the forms we create would be so redundant and ridiculous. The problem is that it's really hard to do. It's really hard to do. It's really hard to carry that stuff forward. But I want to say to you that I've come to see our mission in Lawrence, and our, to the extent that we have anything to kind of share or be in a learning community about, it's about that. It's about how do we bring that ethic of reciprocity deeply and firmly into our work, day to day, every day, in place, in communities of color, in communities of identity. How do we bring that ethic into social change? Because that's the enduring thing that we can lean on. There's a couple things I want to finish up with about that, related to leadership. And that is that one of the first things I started to do with our staff is say to myself, we have to ask ourselves this question always when we think of a program or a meeting or an event we're going to have. Would you go? Would you do this? Would you do it? Okay? Would you bring the people you love to that room? If the answer is no or I don't know, we're not doing it. You shouldn't feel right doing it. Okay? That's like the Neanderthal, kind of level of bringing the golden rule to our practice, right? We can do, if we start with that, think about how that's going to change decision making, right? The rest of it is a lot more complicated than that. So trying to be a leader in an environment like this, there's four things I want to say. You have to see yourself as an inhabitant. You have to walk around asking yourself that question, would I do it? Is this good for me? Right? Do I feel this? Do I feel the rightness of this? You have to focus on the give and get for you. I'm white, I'm a guy, I'm an older guy, I work in a Latino community. I've got to think about being white. I've got to think about what's in this for me to be honest and genuine and be an inhabitant of this environment. Right? And everyone else has got to do the same thing. You have to see yourself as a function, not as a leader. In our environment, I perform a function. We have to struggle aggressively with self-knowledge and communication skills, because when you take this kind of structure away and all the stuff we tend to lean on, what you're left with is human interaction. And so in our staff, we talk about how we get better every day in communication, negotiation, and so on, because that's what we're left at. If we can get really good at that, we'll have a functional environment. If we're really bad at that, we're going to go back to those structures and forms that we need. So because that's a lifelong struggle to figure out how to do that stuff, and we never get it right, there's four things that I focus on in my environment, the things that I feel like I need to push. One is cultivating the demand environment. It's my responsibility and other leaders to make sure that the decisions are being made someplace else. My board oftentimes has a problem where they say to me, we don't get to decide anything. And it's true to some extent. They get to decide some things, but we try to flip that back and talk about, the role of the board is really to be on due diligence and to cultivate the demand environment. It's part of your job to make sure you're not making the decisions, actually. And let's get aggressive about that. Let's do a good job at that. That's my job, too. Creating and protecting space is really fundamental to my job. Space between the practice and the funders. Space between the staff and the members. Creating space between the programs we're committed to and the creation and and creativity that we need to keep having. It's really all about creating space. That poem that you started this off is just so perfect. I want to take it back and read it like every morning over the loudspeakers to the. Although that would be, I'm not sure if that's networky or not. But building and protecting systems in language, building language around this stuff, I think, is really important. We've been able to build a language around our stuff that works for us. And what it helps do is kind of get at nuance. And also give us power over the thing that we're trying to experiment with. The language that's out there doesn't work. So value proposition, we use resonance testing in our program development. There's a lot of language that you see if you look at our website that is language that we didn't invent, we borrowed, but becomes very descriptive of our process. So those are the kind of the things I focus on as a leader. And I'm going to transition now to the